All right, gather around because today we're diving into the wild, morally murky, and utterly chaotic life of Iblis Ginjo, the man who could rally a crowd with a wink while stabbing his allies in the back with the other hand. This guy was pivotal in the Butlerian Jihad, the rebellion that set humanity free from thinking machines, titans, and the all-seeing Omnius. But don't let the shiny hero title fool you. Iblis wasn't just a savior, he was a schemer, a master manipulator with a golden tongue and a heart wrapped in shadows. Before we start, this is your official spoiler warning. This video will explore events from the Butlerian Jihad and the Machine Crusade written by Brian Herbert and Kevin J. Anderson. It is unlikely to spoil anything from Dune Prophecy or the upcoming films, as the events take place roughly 2 centuries before Dune Prophecy and 10 millennia before the Frank Herbert Dune books that the movies are based on. All right, let's paint the scene. Earth under machine rule wasn't just bad, it was end-of-the-world levels of terrible. Skies choked with smog, the air smelling like burnt dreams, and massive Titan statues everywhere to remind you, hey humanity, you lost, we're in charge now. These weren't just decorative statues either. They were monuments to oppression. They were like giant own you billboards, rubbing salt in humanity's wounds. And then there was Iblis Ginjo. Picture him strutting through this disaster like he owned the place, which he kind of did, if being a trustee counts. A trustee, in case you're unfamiliar, is basically a middle manager for slaves. His job? Keep the workers in line while making sure the machines didn't laser him into oblivion. Iblis didn't lead with fear like the machines. No, this guy was handing out rewards like Oprah. You get a day off, you get an extra crust of bread, everybody gets a slightly less miserable day. And guess what? People ate it up. Literally, Iblis was the kind of leader who could inspire loyalty, even in a world where hope had been stomped out by a billion robot feet. Now, before you start planning a parade for him, let's get one thing straight. Iblis wasn't running a charity. Sure, he kept people alive, but he also kept them working for the bad guys. Cool boss? Maybe. Complicated guy? Definitely. Hero? Let's not get ahead of ourselves. Here's where things start to get spicy. Iblis Ginjo, already the king of playing both sides, begins to feel a spark of rebellion. And not the let's be free kind, but the I want to take these machines down so I can be in charge variety. Subtle difference, but important. You see, Iblis wasn't just angry about humanity's suffering. He was angry he wasn't the one calling the shots. And then he meets Serena Butler. Serena wasn't just another face in the crowd. She was defiant, fiery, and let's face it, way out of Iblis's league. But Iblis wasn't dumb. He saw her potential right away. When he found out she was pregnant, his manipulative brain lit up like a Christmas tree. A child born in the middle of all this chaos? Serena was more than a rebel. She was a symbol waiting to happen. Meanwhile, Iblis was making visits to Cognitor Eklo, a literal brain in a jar who spent his days dishing out philosophical advice. Eklo was like, if you really want to take down the machines, you've got to get people worked up. Religion, passion, symbols, those are your tools. And Iblis? Oh, he filed that advice under things to exploit later. But let's not get it twisted. This wasn't some noble epiphany. Sure, Iblis hated the machines, but he wasn't exactly altruistic. He didn't just want to free humanity. He wanted to rule it. So, while the seeds of rebellion were definitely being planted, they were growing in a garden of ambition. And Iblis, he was the gardener, tending to his plans with just the right amount of charisma, scheming, and maybe a dash of chaos. All right, this is where everything goes from a slow simmer to a full-blown inferno. It all starts with Serena Butler's child, Menayon. Now, you'd think the machines couldn't stoop any lower, but Erasmus, our favorite sadistic robot, with a penchant for studying humans, decided to cross every conceivable line. He murdered Menayon in cold, mechanical logic. And just like that, the machines accidentally created a martyr. Serena, crushed but not broken, stood her ground. Her grief turned into defiance, and her defiance turned into inspiration. News spread like wildfire. Slaves across Earth started whispering about rebellion, and those whispers turned into shouts. Suddenly, the Titans' monuments weren't just oversized trophies. They were storage closets for hidden weapons. And who stepped up to lead the charge? You guessed it. Iblis Ginjo. Iblis, ever the opportunist, knew this was his moment. He rallied the rebels, turned their grief into rage, and then channeled that rage into something productive: violence. Under his leadership, the rebellion made its first major move, bringing down a Titan. Yep, one of those giant metal overlords finally bit the dust. This wasn't just a win, it was a statement. For the first time, humans proved that the machines weren't invincible. And let me tell you, the psychological boost was off the charts. People who had been beaten down for generations suddenly believed they could fight back. But let's be real. This wasn't just about freedom for Iblis. Sure, he wanted to break the machine's hold, but he also wanted everyone to remember who was in charge of the rebellion. And it was him. He wasn't just fighting for humanity. He was fighting for his spot at the top of the human pyramid. Enjoying the video? Don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into the DUNE universe. So, the rebellion's on fire, figuratively and literally, and Iblis Ginjo is riding the wave like a pro surfer. But even rebels need to know when it's time to dip. After Earth turned into a battlefield, Iblis, Serena Butler, and Vorian Atreides made a dramatic exit, leaving the wreckage behind. Their escape was less heroic charge and more run before the machines crush us. But hey, survival counts. Their escape brought them to Salusa Secundus, not exactly a paradise, but it was the safest option left. They landed on Salusa Secundus, which sounds fancy but was basically a giant intergalactic refugee camp at this point. Here, humanity mourned the devastation of Earth. Serena was still reeling from the loss of her son. The League of Nobles was scrambling like headless chickens. And Iblis, he saw an opportunity. Using the memory of Serena's murdered child, Mannion, he crafted the ultimate propaganda piece. He branded the rebellion as Mannion Butler's Jihad, giving it a name that carried grief, anger, and purpose all in one. Marketing genius, and the League ate it up. Then Serena stepped up with an impassioned call to arms. She stood there, grief radiating off her like a spotlight, and declared a holy war against the machines. It was raw, emotional, and exactly what people needed to hear. Meanwhile, Iblis played backup. He polished her words with just enough spin to unify the fractured League. Mannion Butler's Jihad wasn't just a rebellion anymore. It was a movement. And Iblis, he wasn't just a leader. He was starting to look like humanity's savior. But here's the kicker. While Serena became the heart of the Jihad, Iblis positioned himself as the brain. Or if we're being honest, the puppet master. He understood how to play the long game, and step one was making sure everyone followed his lead, even if they didn't realize it. Iblis Ginjo didn't just ride the wave of the Jihad, he owned it. The League needed a leader, and Iblis showed up like, yeah, I've got this. Boom, Grand Patriarch. The title was flashy, the power even flashier. First order of business? The Jihad Police, or Jipol. Think less neighborhood watch and more thought police with flamethrowers. If you so much as blinked at Iblis the wrong way, Jipol was there to fix your attitude permanently. Next up, politics. Iblis turned alliances into an art form. Strategic marriages? Check. Convenient purges? Double check. Propaganda? He was running it like a 24/7 reality show. Serena's face and Mannion Butler's name were everywhere, keeping people fired up while Iblis quietly took control of everything. Freedom fighter? Sure. On paper, power-hungry manipulator? Oh, 100%. Iblis wasn't just leading the Jihad, he was building an empire with himself at the top. And if that meant crushing a few dissenters along the way, well, he didn't lose any sleep over it. Here's where things start getting messy. Iblis Ginjo might have been the face of the rebellion, but behind the scenes, he was cutting deals so shady they'd make a con artist proud. Case in point, the Tlulaxa organ farms. Need fresh organs for your war effort? Sure thing, just don't ask where they came from. Spoiler, it wasn't a pretty process. The moral cost was huge, but Iblis didn't care. As long as it kept the Jihad running, he was all in. But not everyone was on board. Savior Harkonnen, Mr. Morality himself, uncovered the truth, and wasn't exactly thrilled to find out the Grand Patriarch was buddying up with organ harvesters. Let's just say this discovery planted some serious seeds of doubt. Meanwhile, Serena Butler, the heart of the Jihad, found herself sidelined. Iblis kept her in the spotlight, but only as a symbol. Grieving mother, fearless leader. She was everything the rebellion needed to stay inspired. But behind closed doors, she was being pushed out of the decision-making process faster than you could say martyr. Iblis wasn't losing his edge, though. He was sharpening it. Every compromise, every backroom deal, every manipulation, it all fed into his ultimate goal, total control. Morals were for people who couldn't win wars, and Iblis, he was winning. The Jihad was in full swing, but here's the thing about fighting an army of immortal robots. They don't get tired, they don't get bored, and they sure don't give up. Humanity? Not so much. League colonies were stretched thin, morale was tanking, and the war started feeling less like a holy crusade and more like an unwinnable grind. But Iblis wasn't about to let a little thing like reality ruin his plans. When brute force wasn't cutting it, he pivoted to a different playbook: psychological and cultural warfare. Forget just fighting the machines. He wanted to mess with their heads, if they even had those, and tighten his grip on humanity while he was at it. Enter melange. That's right, the spice that would one day dominate the galaxy made its debut during the Jihad. It wasn't just a resource, it was a game changer. Melange enhanced human abilities, expanded lifespans, and gave the Jihad a much needed edge. Oh, and it also made people a little addicted. Bonus points for keeping everyone under Iblis's control. Meanwhile, the League Parliament was cracking under the pressure. Infighting, disagreements, and endless debates. Classic bureaucracy. But Iblis? He thrived in chaos. Every problem was just another opportunity for him to consolidate power. The war might have been stagnating, but his influence wasn't. If anything, it was stronger than ever. Here's where Iblis Ginjo shows he's not just a master strategist. He's rewriting the rules of the game. The war needed a spark, something to reignite humanity's fury against the machines. And Iblis? Oh, he had a plan. Enter Serena Butler, still the heart of the Jihad, but more symbol than leader at this point. Iblis convinced her to undertake a dangerous mission to Corinne, the heart of Omnius's empire. Was this mission about strategy? Not really, it was about optics. Iblis knew exactly what was going to happen. Serena would never come back. But that's the thing, she didn't need to. Her death wasn't a failure, it was the ultimate PR move. When Serena was martyred, humanity didn't just mourn, they exploded. The grief, the anger, the sheer hatred for the machines, it all boiled over. Uprisings reignited, battles intensified, and the Jihad got the shot of adrenaline it desperately needed. Iblis, of course, was right there to capitalize on it, spinning Serena's sacrifice into the rallying cry of the century. But let's not sugarcoat it. This wasn't just a tragic loss, it was a calculated move. Iblis didn't just let it happen, he made it happen. And while humanity rallied, Serena's death also tightened his grip. The Jihad was no longer just a rebellion. It was a movement under his control. Cold? Sure. Effective? Absolutely. Here's the thing about being a manipulative genius. Eventually, someone's going to figure it out. For Iblis Ginjo, that someone was Xavier Harkonnen. Mr. Morality wasn't just watching Iblis's moves. He'd been building a case, connecting the dots between the Tulaxa organ farms, shady massacres, and every other skeleton in Iblis's closet. And now? He was ready to confront the Grand Patriarch himself. I know many things about you, Iblis. The organ farms are only one of your unforgivable crimes and deceits, Xavier said coldly. Iblis didn't flinch. You have no proof of that, he said, his voice dripping with ice. Xavier shot back without missing a beat. Interesting response, but not one an innocent man would give. But Xavier wasn't done. He pressed harder. I know what you did to the settlements on Chusuk, Riso, and Balut. Those were not really thinking machine attacks, were they? Iblis's silence said plenty, but when he did speak, it wasn't to deny the allegations, it was to double down. Serena Butler would have understood. She saw how the people had lost their resolve. They are lazy, no longer focused on the important fight. By God, they were willing to accept the Cogitor's ceasefire proposal. We must never let that happen again. Xavier's response cut through the tension like a blade. I agree, he said, but not at the cost you have in mind. And that's where things got personal. Xavier wasn't just challenging Iblis's decisions. He was cutting to the heart of the man's character. Serena understood the need for sacrifice and motivation, but when the time came, she did it herself. She asked no one else to become victims for her. You are a selfish, power-hungry man, Iblis. Iblis wasn't about to let that slide. If you try to expose my so-called crimes, you will never be able to make your accusations stick, he spat. No one will listen, old man. My power base is too secure. Xavier didn't flinch. I know, he said. That is why I can't allow politicians to deal with this matter. You and your lackey, Yorick Thur, would only manipulate evidence and worm your way out of any punishment. And then came the twist no one saw coming. Instead, I now act as a military officer for the good of the Jihad. As I always have, it is my decision to remove an enemy from the battlefield. At this moment, Iblis Ginjo, you are the greatest enemy to mankind. The final move wasn't flashy, it was deliberate. Xavier hijacked a League ship, grabbed Iblis Ginjo, and flew them both straight into the sun. The final act of rebellion, and a sacrifice that left the Jihad without its most corrupt leader. But here's the kicker. The truth about Iblis's manipulation didn't die with him. The League decided to sweep the ugly parts of his legacy under the rug. Why? Because Serena Butler's memory and the Jihad's unity depended on it. Humanity needed a hero, not a cautionary tale. So, Iblis Ginjo went down in history as a martyr, not the Machiavellian schemer he really was. The Jihad raged on, but cracks in the League's unity started showing. Without Iblis pulling the strings, the rebellion lost its sharp edge. Turns out, for all his flaws, he was holding things together. Humanity would win the war, but the cost of victory? That's a story for another time. Iblis Ginjo's story doesn't end with his fiery demise. Oh no, his legacy lingering like a shadow over everything that came next. History remembered him as a hero of the jihad, the grand patriarch, who unified humanity against the thinking machines. Sounds great, right? Well, that's just the surface level version. The truth, a lot murkier. On one hand, you've got the people who praise Iblis as the mastermind behind the rebellion, the guy who took humanity from helpless slaves to unstoppable force. On the other hand, you've got the receipts, the manipulation, the organ farms, the betrayals. He wasn't just leading the fight. He was bending the rules, the people, and even the truth to serve his own agenda. But here's the kicker. Humanity needed someone like Iblis. As terrible as he was, his ambition and scheming kept the jihad moving. Without him, the rebellion would have fallen apart like a sandcastle in a storm. His sacrifices, and let's be real, most of those sacrifices weren't even his to make, kept the jihad alive. And yet, even in death, Iblis didn't escape irony. The seeds of disunity he planted during his rise started to sprout. The League of Nobles began to fracture, the moral compromises came back to haunt them, and humanity's so-called unity started showing cracks. His legacy wasn't just about the jihad, it was about what came next. The seeds of Arrakis's rise were planted during his time. Melange, the spice that would change everything, began to weave itself into the fabric of human culture. The jihad's lessons, its costs, and its victories shaped humanity for generations. And Iblis? Well, he's the cautionary tale hidden behind the statue of a hero. Was he a savior or a monster, a genius or a tyrant? The answer is all of the above. Let us know in the comments what you think of his story. And as always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more epic stories from the DUNE universe. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.